Mystic Guide going up to challenge Hypothetical. Then Sleepy Eyes Todd Chua Wizard continues to come on. Then Magnicor. Jesus' team are down the outside. But Mystic Guide races away in the cup. Inside the 200 metres mark. Gets away by 3. Chua Wizard, Hypothetical, Salute the Soldier, Magnicor. But it's going to be a Godolphin win. A Godolphin USA win. Mystic Guide charges away and takes the Dubai World Cup. Mystic Guide wins easy.
Welcome back to Racing Rundown. In this video, we're going to preview the Grade 2 Suburban Stakes at Belmont Park. This is a new race in the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series, a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic of 2021. And this is the first time that this race has been a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic under this current form of the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series. And this race is also going to answer the question that has been asked for weeks now, and that is, who is the leader of the handicap division in the United States, the leader in the pack for the older horses going towards the Breeders' Cup Classic. Right now, there's several horses that all have good cases to be made for it, but my opinion, the two top horses in the handicap division are running this weekend in Mystic Guide and Happy Saver, and the question will come, who is the better of the two? But before we do that, we're going to talk about all the other horses in this race like we do for any preview here on Racing Rundown. And we will start off with the number 1 horse, Moretti, for Todd Pletcher. One of 2 horses that he has entering this race. Moretti is certainly his longer priced horse of the 2, but Moretti is not a horse who is without talent, although I will say Moretti is probably not going to win this race. And for one simple reason, Moretti is a horse who wants longer than a mile and a. And it's very rare to say that about a horse entered in a 1.25 mile race nowadays, that they want more, but that's the case for Moretti. You go back and you look at his runs last year, a couple of listed stakes wins. He won the Flat Out Stakes and the Birdstone Stakes. The Flat Out was 1 3/8. The Birdstone was 1 3/4. Moretti's last start, the Brooklyn, 1.5 miles. This is a horse who is a marathon runner. He's running in this race because he needs a start between now and the the Birdstone. The Suburban and then the Birdstone after. So definitely understand the decision to run him here. I don't think he'll run bad, but he definitely wants more distance, and I'm going to be against him in this race because of that fact. We'll move on now to the number 2 horse, Informative, for trainer Uriah St. Louis. And this horse is coming out of a massive upset in the Salvatore Mile. Uriah St. Louis is not unknown for pulling off upsets like this. His most notable one is probably Discreet Lover, who won the Jockey Club Gold Cup back in 2018. But looking at Informative, this is a horse who has only won 3 times in 25 career starts. So definitely definitely not against the likes of the horses that he's going to be going up against in here. So, it was a nice win for him last out, but I don't think it was a bad group of horses that he beat. I think that several of those horses are good graded stakes level, ceiling probably grade 3, but they were good horses in there for a stake like the Salvatore Mile, but that group is not a group that's going to come back and run well against the likes of Happy Saver and Mystic Guide, and for that reason I'm going to be against Informative, because I just think, number 1, he's going to be very overly matched, and number 2, getting into the pace setup of this a little bit, this is going to be a paceless race, and with his running style, a dead closer, he was a dead closer in the Salvatore Mile. I don't think that a race where the top horses are going to be pretty close to walking is going to be very beneficial for him, so I don't think he's going to pull off another kind of upset in this race. The number 3 horse is Prioritize, a horse who you may remember from a couple of runs in some of the handicap races last year. Those were okay efforts in the Woodward and the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but he clearly showed that then he was inferior to some of the better horses in the handicap division, including the top 2 in this race. He was 4th in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, beaten by both Mystic Guide and Happy Saver, as well as Tacitus on top of that. His one start this year, the Pimlico Special, you could say that was because he was coming off the layoff, but really at the end of the day, he is a horse who has been overmatched before. He's coming up against a pair of horses that he lost to soundly last year, and I haven't really seen much that's changed from Prioritize, so I'm going to be against Prioritize in here for that reason. We'll move on now to the number 4 horse, the likely favorite in here, the 2021 Dubai World Cup winner, Mystic Guide. Mystic Guide is a horse who I have been high on ever since he won the Jim Dandy back in September of last year on Kentucky Derby Day. And Mystic Guide is a horse who has progressed really well from 3 to 4. You go and you look at some of his runs, especially in his early 3-year-old campaign. He was inconsistent, kind of runs, but those were back when Mystic Guide still was trying to figure everything out mentally. He definitely has figured it out since. 2 graded stakes wins in the United States, an international Group 1 win in the Dubai World Cup, and then a Grade 1 placing behind Happy Saver. I'll get to talk about the Jockey Club Gold Cup in a minute, but I just want to say about Mystic Guide, I'm really sick of hearing the argument he's beaten nobody. Yeah, I know that his wins in both the Razorback and the Dubai World Cup were rather light, but I really don't happen to care, especially the Razorback. The argument has been made, well, he didn't really beat anybody, and that was the argument that was being made going into the Dubai World Cup, and I'm going to say the same thing now that I said back then, and that was, you look at the Razorback. Yeah, it wasn't the most accomplished group in the world, but you did have good horses in there. Graded stakes level horses, Silver Prospector, Owendale almost won a graded stakes race this year, and even horses like Rated R Superstar and Long Range Toddy are solid horses, but I'm not using the quality of the horses that he beat in the Razorback as a reason why I think this argument is invalid. The reason I'm bringing that up is because you look at his run in the Razorback in terms of how he ran the race. He was coming into it off of not having run since the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and he won the Razorback very impressively. I don't really think anybody can tell me that that wasn't an impressive win for Mystic Guide, and if you do, I'm just going to say I flatly disagree with you. Mystic Guide had to go 5 wide off the turn in the Razorback on a track that was not a very easy track to run on. You look at a lot of the times came back relatively slow that day because it was a very wet track at the point, and it was probably getting a lot more tiring toward the end of the card. That's what some of the times bared out. And at the end of the day, he won the race by 6 lengths going away. It was a very impressive victory. It's what catapulted him to being able to go to the Dubai World Cup. And then his win in the Dubai World Cup was a good win. He did what he had to do. Again, didn't beat the greatest field in the world, but I really don't care how good or not good the field was that he beat in Dubai. He did it the way he needed to do. He did it nicely, and I have no reason to think that Mystic Guide is not a good horse. Now we'll move on to the race that he lost to Happy Saver last year in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. And it wasn't really of this position then, but in hindsight, having looked at the way this race shaped up, I'm not convinced that Happy Saver was that much better than Mystic Guide on the day. I think he was better than Mystic Guide on the day, but I don't think it was by that much, and I don't think it was by 3/4 of a length. And even then, even if you do think Happy Saver was 3/4 of a length better than Mystic Guide on the day, Mystic Guide still ran second, beaten less than a length by a really good, at the time, really good 3-year-old who at that point had just become a Grade 1 winner. But I will get into why I think that the Jockey Club Gold Cup, there are some very valid excuses for Mystic Guide. Number one, Mystic Guide was outside of all the other horses in there. He drew the outside post. Happy Saver drew the 1, so he got to save all the ground. So, of course, that trip is going to benefit him. And that's exactly what happened. Happy Saver sat the easiest trip. He saved all the ground. Mystic Guide did not. Mystic Guide had to go around Tacitus, go 3 wide into the turn. He was giving up ground to a horse who was saving all the ground. It would be one thing if he wasn't giving up the ground to Happy Saver, but he was giving up the ground to Happy Saver. Happy Saver sat the best trip in the race, and at the end of the day, had enough left to hold off Mystic Guide and be able to win by 3/4 of a length. I will say that the trip definitely made Happy Saver, in my opinion at least, look a lot better than I think he actually was that day. Was he still going to win the race? I am not ready to say that he wouldn't, but I am ready to say that if Mystic Guide wasn't giving up the ground to Happy Saver, that Mystic Guide would have run a lot closer to Happy Saver, and he was only beaten 3/4 of a length. If he was not giving up the ground and he's running a lot closer, who knows how close that race is, but Happy Saver was not 3/4 of a length better than Mystic Guide that day. I'm convinced that Mystic Guide is a better horse. I'm not saying that Happy Saver can't have improved from that as well, but I have seen it with Mystic Guide. I have not seen it yet with Happy Saver. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I have yet to see it. And I have seen it with Mystic Guide. I've been with Mystic Guide for a very long time. I'm not going to change it today. So I'm going to be picking Mystic Guide on top in here. Before we get to talking more about Happy Saver, we'll move on to the number 5 horse, Max Player, for trainer Steve Asmussen. Max Player has been a horse who's been relatively solid in his career, especially going back to when he was a 3-year-old. Couple of third-place finishes in the Belmont and the Travers, pair of 5th-place finishes in the remaining 2 legs of the Triple Crown in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. His runs this year have left a lot to be desired, but Saudi Cup, he was coming off the layoff after shipping overseas, and then in the Pimlico Special, he was coming back, having shipped out overseas. So I think he can run a little bit better than he did in both of those two races, but he was never a horse who was going to beat these kind of horses anyway, so I'm very comfortable going against him here. And the final horse we're going to get to is the horse who I mentioned about as much as Mystic Guide when I was going on my defensive Mystic Guide, and that's Happy Saver. And, I want to say, Happy Saver is a really good horse. You look at what he did, 3-year-old stepping up majorly from his win in the Federico Tessio. The Federico Tessio, I wasn't a big fan of the race coming out of it. I thought that it was, I had heard a lot of great things about Happy Saver, but it wasn't the kind of win that I looked at that and I said, wow, this horse is going to win a Grade 1 in his next start. But he stepped up and he ran the race to win the Jockey Club Gold Cup. And I'm not taking the win away, even though my saying that he did give up the ground and did get the best trip, that's just a fact. He did get the best trip, but I don't mean to take the win away from him. It was a really good race that Happy Saver had to run. Again, he had to hold off Mystic Guide. Mystic Guide had an opportunity to run down Happy Saver and did not. So Happy Saver deserves the credit for that. But the things that I'm against Happy Saver for in this race is I don't know that, as I mentioned, in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, I don't know that he was that much better than Mystic Guide. And Mystic Guide has improved so much from his 3-year-old campaign that I think he may be better than Happy Saver. That doesn't mean that Happy Saver, again, doesn't mean that he hasn't improved himself, but I have liked what I've seen from Mystic Guide this year. Really, really liked the Razorback. I've liked the Razorback a lot more than the Dubai World Cup, and I'm sure that's different from a lot of other people's opinions, but that's just my opinion on it. So Mystic Guide is going to be my top pick in here. Happy Saver is going to be really tough to beat, though. I think these two are going to run a very, very good race in here. But again, advantage goes to Mystic Guide because he drew inside to give up the ground. Getting into the pace a little bit of this race before I cut this off, because I did not really get too much into the pace. I said it was going to be paceless, but these two horses are both stalker types in races when there are horses that have the lead. But there is not going to be that kind of horse in this race. So these two are going to have to be they're going to have to be forwardly placed. And it's going to be one of these two, 1-2. And whether or not it's Mystic Guide, Happy Saver, or Happy Saver, Mystic Guide, we'll find out. But I really don't think these two are going to go fast enough where they'll duel each other out and open it up for someone else to win. And I think it's just they'll go around the track, and at the end of the day, the best horse is going to win. And we'll find out who the top horse in the handicap division is. I think it's Mystic Guide. We will find out, though. And if it is Happy Saver, Happy Saver will most likely deserve the race, assuming that no shenanigans of jockeys getting dumped or anything like that happens. We'll deserve the race. And again, I went on a big defensive Mystic Guide. That's not to put down Happy Saver. That's to say I think Mystic Guide is a lot better than people want to give him credit for. So with all that being mentioned, that's it for this video. We'll see you for more Breeders' Cup Challenge previews that we have coming up this weekend. There's a pair of 2 additional Breeders' Cup Challenge races for sprint races on the Breeders' Cup card, as well as we will also be discussing the Dwyer Stakes whenever that race's entries come out. That is being run on Monday. So we'll see you then. Have a good one, and if you do play this race, there's not much money to be made, but if you do play it, hopefully you pick the right horse. Have a good one.
Guide on the outside, Happy Saver down at the rail, so it's 3 of them across the track, and here is Mystic Guide on the outside to poke ahead in front. Happy Saver's now coming on. It's going to be between the 2 3-year-olds. Happy Saver at the rail, Mystic Guide on the outside. Happy Saver is in front, and Happy Saver stays undefeated. He steps up and he wins the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.